Hi, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic called tax loss harvesting, which is very important because if you're going to do this, you need to do this in the next week. Uh, because after March 31, which is the end of the financial year, you will not be able to tax loss harvest um, for this year. So just as the term harvest suggests, here, if you have some tax losses, you may want to book them because these can be offset against your gains. So if you have a short-term capital loss, that can be offset against a short-term capital gain or a long-term capital gain. Now, in the case of equity, the tax rates are 15% for short-term and 10% for long-term. Okay. So if you do not have gains in a particular financial year, then the loss can be carried forward for 8 years, right? And it can be offset against future gains. Now, there is also this thing that in the US, if you just sell something at a loss, you can't buy the same thing for at least 30 days, right? So you must hold that particular thing that you're selling for at least 30 days. And then after you sell it, you can't buy it for 30 days. So that is to discourage tax loss harvesting just for the purpose of lowering your taxes and things like that. In India, there is no such rule, but it's like a gray area. So there are two types of tax loss harvesting that we will talk about, and I'll give you concrete examples for both. One is where you're just actually selling some items to book the tax loss, reduce your tax liability, and then you're buying it back, say in the next financial year. So if you do it at the end of the financial year and then you buy it back in the next financial year, then you will. In India, there may be a very remote chance that your assessing officer, if your return gets selected for scrutiny, they might say, "Oh, you've done some stuff just to avoid tax, so I'm going to disallow this." But the chances are, if you do it across financial years, is pretty low. But in any case, I'm not a tax advisor, so you should always consult your CA or whatever before doing anything. But at least you can understand the mechanics behind this. Okay, so with that, I'll get started with some actual examples. But before I do that, Madhuri and Abhishek, if you have any questions on the concept of tax loss harvesting, please ask those. Abhishek, anything?
No, again, this is a very new thing for me, so I'm first looking to learn. I don't have any specific questions at the moment.
Okay. So did you basically understand, what this harvesting is? Because you have losses which you can set off. Okay. So your net gain in a particular year will come down. So you'll have to pay less tax, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's it. Now, Madhuri, any questions from your side?
No, nothing right now.
Okay. So let's take an example. This is a real life example of a person. So we first looked at this around March 13th because the market fell. As you know, mid caps and small caps are kind of correcting, and there has been some market weakness. So this person had bought some of these funds, which are mentioned here, this quant small cap fund, direct growth, mid quant, mid cap direct growth, and this Motilal S&P BSE enhanced value index fund. Okay. So we bought these funds a little bit prior to the market fall. So we were seeing that since the financial year is approaching, then should we think of tax loss harvesting or not? Right. So that's why we kind of did this analysis. Now, to deter short-term selling and all this kind of thing, mutual funds have these things called exit loads. Right. Now, as you can see here, the exit load is 1%. of the value. So there was 17 lakhs or so here. So the exit load is 17,780. In this case, it was 1 crore 76 lakhs. So the exit load is 1,76,000. And in this case, the exit load is zero because this is an index fund where the thing was that if you have held it for over 15 days, then there is no exit load. And in this case, the person had held it for over 15 days. So there's no exit load, right? So in the case of mutual funds, one of the things, if you're trying to do this tax loss harvesting, you have to see is that whether any exit loads will apply or not, right? Then the next thing was that in each of these funds, this was the loss. So basically, when they bought it and the price as on March 13th, the loss was about 7,68,000. Okay, which in percentage terms, as you can see on small cap, it was the highest at 6.79, then 2.92, 3.08. So it was around a loss of 3.2%, right? Now, this also brings us to an important point that when you see losses like this, when you've bought something, then your immediate tendency is to say, hey, maybe I bought the wrong thing. Should I just get out of it, right? Now, you normally got to resist that tendency. Okay, because you bought it for the long term. You've analyzed it. We've talked about holding power where you're trying to hold it for 7 years. So you should not think of selling. So why are we thinking of selling? This is because this is a special case, right? There is this thing where we are close to the end of the financial year and the losses have been quite substantial and we can buy it back, the same fund. Okay. So that is why we are thinking of selling. Otherwise, we would not even bother, right? We'd say, yeah, fine. It went down, it'll come up, whatever. And we had anyway bought it for a long time. Okay. So I'll pause here. So is this clear about what funds the person held? What was this exit load? What was the loss? Why are we thinking of selling even though he had just bought it? Okay. So the conclusion may be that we don't sell, but I'm just saying that it's worth analyzing, right? Because so how much would the gain be on this loss of 7,68,000, right? So now if you see, how do you get the gain? So the gain before tax loss harvesting that this person had was he had a short-term gain of 4,05,000. And a long-term gain of 35 lakhs because the person had restructured his portfolio, right? Now, the estimated tax on this gain would have been 60,750, which is 15% of this, and 3,51,400, which is 10% of this. So the tax that the person would pay would be 4,12,150 before this tax loss harvesting. Now, if they did this tax loss harvesting, then out of the 7,68,000, 4,05,000 would be set off against the short-term gain, right? So that would become zero, right? The balance would be set off against the long-term gain. So the long-term gain would become 29,57,000 from 35 lakhs. Okay. And the thing would be that the estimated tax would be 295,722 now. So there is a gain of 1,16,428 because of doing this tax loss harvesting. Okay. Is this clear? Yeah. Okay, cool. So now let's move on and say that we can, so I've allocated this gain based on the amount purchased and said, okay, this is the amount that we have here, right? This is the kind of, when I allocate it to a particular mutual fund. So now we can calculate the net loss after removing this gain. So the net loss now reduces and you have The net loss, basically, this is interesting. Okay, so here the loss is 3,38,000, which is this, and F11. It's not F11. Okay, it's yeah, the total loss, sorry. Okay, so the total loss was actually 9,61,780. Yeah, that's the thing that I was getting confused by. Yeah. So the total loss is 9,60,000. The loss before this the exit load was 7,68,000, but actually the loss will be 961,780 because the exit load would be added, right? So that has dropped to 8,45,352, right? So there's a difference of 116 here. And the earlier the tax loss percentage was 3.21, now it's 2.82. So we can do also some other calculations like saying what is the tax loss gain divided by the exit load, and the tax loss gain minus the exit load, and so on and so forth. Because see, if the tax loss gain is less than the exit load, then we shouldn't exit, right? So in these first two cases, we shouldn't exit. In this case, we possibly could think of an exit. Okay. So this is what now what is this break-even swing? So if I exit, right, I redeem this, and then I buy it back. So there will be a price at which I sell it, and then the money will come in. Then there'll be a price at which I buy it, right? So there's a time difference, which may be in a few days. But if the thing moved against me by this percentage, then I would lose out by doing all this tax loss harvesting. Correct? So when I look at this, it overall suggests to me that, hey, maybe it's not such a good idea to tax loss harvest, right? Because in these two cases, there's exit load, so I'm not going to benefit. In this case, I'll benefit by 41,000 rupees, but the swing is 0.39%. So, doing all this effort, redeeming, buying it back, then, taking the small risk that my return might get scrutinized, whatever, and all that, is it really worth it? Right. So as you can see, this person's mutual fund holdings are quite substantial. These are only 3 funds. So in the scheme of things, 41,000 is not like, while it may be a big number, but it's not really a big number in the context of this person's wealth. Right? Okay, so let's move forward to a little more analysis of the same thing. So if I go here and I say, what happened? So this was March 13th. Suppose now I go to March 23rd, which is today, and then I do the analysis again. So these numbers remain the same. The gain before tax loss harvesting, etc., they are the same, right? But now what's happened is that one of these funds, the Quant Midcap Direct Growth, has recovered. Okay, so now it's actually showing a gain, not a loss, right? So we've removed that from the analysis because it's showing a gain, not a loss, right? So now there are only two funds which are showing a loss, okay? And the loss, if you remember, was something like the total loss was about 9,68,000. It's now swung to 2,06,920. Okay. So the thing is that now when I look at it, the tax loss gain that I'm going to get is only 31,038, which was earlier 1,16,000. Correct? And now when I allocate it in there, so now I see again here, this is a negative figure. So this particular fund that we're still scrutinizing, it's like, okay, we could gain 26,580 by selling this fund. and the swing is 0.25%, right? Now, what will happen in the next 2-3 days? We don't know, 26, 27, 28. But essentially, unless there's a very sharp fall, we're probably not going to do anything because this is not worth it, right, for this kind of thing. But at least we have this analysis framework. Okay. So this is for the mutual fund case. Then I just want to move on to a stock case, right? Like if you have stocks. Okay. So any questions on this, or was this pretty clear?
One quick question. So this is on notional loss, right? Not the actual loss.
It won't become an actual loss till you book it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a pre-booking analysis. So to
Correct.
speak. Okay.
Should I do this transaction or not?
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
Okay. So see, this is a very good question, Vishek, that you're asking, because a lot of people, they say, oh, I bought this mutual fund, for 10 rupees and now it's 100 rupees. So, I've gained so much. But the fact of the matter is that if you're not selling that mutual fund, okay, you're actually buying it at today's price. Okay. The fact that you bought it at 10 rupees is just historical. And it's relevant for tax purposes and all. But otherwise, I mean, you may feel good about it, but all this is what is called unrealized gains or losses. And if you remember in some of my previous sessions where I talked about the balance sheet and the importance of unrealized gain and realized gain, all that is kind of relevant, right? So this is just an analysis, like Hamlet said, to be or not to be, right? So here it is a question of to tax loss harvest or not to tax loss harvest. That's the simple question that we are not the deep existential question that Hamlet was talking about, right? So this is a very simple practical question saying, should I tax loss harvest or not? Right. And that's the kind of thing that we are trying to answer. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
I just have one quick question. If you can
Sure.
just tell me what the break-even swing is, if you can just explain that a little bit.
Yeah.
Breaking even against what two parameters is a little unclear to me right now.
So if you look at the formula, it's K11, which is the gain here, right? Which is this 26,580, right? Divided by B11, which is basically the amount invested, which was 1 crore, right? So basically it's saying that if the price moves by 0.25% against you, you will have wiped out this 26,580 that you would have gained by actually booking this loss, right? So that's an unknown variable, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen, right? Like after you sell it, the market may go down or the market may go up. And your intention is to buy it as soon as possible, right? Because you're just doing this. It's not that you don't believe in this fund or anything like that, right? Because I said that there were two types of tax loss harvesting. One in which you sort of continue to believe in the underlying assets. You were just doing it to harvest tax loss. The other is you are restructuring your portfolio. And you can do this with mutual funds, you can do this with stocks. So the next one that we're going to do for stocks is going to be in terms of, we'll do two. One where we are actually restructuring the portfolio. And the other where we have, and in that case, the tax loss harvesting was done. So the loss was converted to an actual situation and not a notional situation. Okay. Okay, so is this break-even swing clear? Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now let's move on to the case where we did a tax loss harvesting, which was actually done. And it was okay. Okay. Right. So we'll move on to this case. So now in this case, what happened was that around maybe the the beginning of March or so, these 6 stocks were sold. So IndusInd Bank, Kotak, ITC, Hindustan Lever, Asian Paints, HDFC, they were sold. And these were the amounts which were sold. Okay. And this was the price at which they were sold. So this was the sale value that you got. So about 1.4 crores was sold, 1.37 crores to be precise. Right? So these stocks were sold because there was a loss on these stocks. Right? And the price which was there, the price which was there was today's price is this. So had we not sold that, then the value of these stocks would have been this, right? So it would have been 1 point. So as you can see, 3 of the stocks after we've sold them have gone up in price. So this is that swing that I was talking about, right? And 3 of them have uh, gone down, right? So this is the situation as it was, right? So by selling these, so suppose I'd sold all these and I just kept it in cash and the cash earned nothing, right? I would have benefited to the extent of 13,56,925, right? Because these stocks have gone down, but the cash hasn't gone down because that is because the market has been weak in March, right? But however, that was not done. And uh, these stocks were bought. So Geofin was bought, Adani Enterprises was bought, Coal India was bought, PFC was bought, Tata Power was bought. And these were the amounts which were bought. This was the price at which they were bought. So this was the value which was bought. And then this was the price, today's price for these stocks, and the value today, how much it is. So as you can see that there are 4 stocks which from the price that they were bought have declined. 2 stocks have gone, right? So, and there is a certain amount which is lying in cash, right? Now I can do this analysis even 1 year later, right? And see whether my tax loss harvesting was beneficial for me or not, right? So this figure, the tax loss harvesting effect of 9,88,487, which is the difference between the value it would have been had I not tax loss harvested and the value it is because I tax loss harvested, okay, is this figure. Okay. And then there was a tax loss harvesting gain because the losses which I booked, I got a gain because of the set off kind of thing of 1,35,693, right? So my total benefit of doing this tax loss harvesting was 11,24,179, which came from 2 aspects. One aspect being the gain from tax, and the second thing was the restructuring. Right? The restructuring being I sold these 6 stocks and I bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stocks. Right? Now, this kind of thing is not, there is no tax thing where anyone can say, hey, because this I can do at any time, right? I can sell a stock and buy another stock, right? right? So this, I'm not, trying to do it purely for tax reasons. I'm restructuring my portfolio, right? So this is very clean, right? And I did this, and so far it seems to be working. Now, 6 months later, I can plug in these prices again and see what's the delta, and these prices, and see what's the delta, and see what the TLH effect has been, right? Okay. So, I mean, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm not really that bothered about it, because I've restructured it because I thought these stocks will not do that well, and these stocks might do better, right? So I had some reason of trying to clean up the stocks which were losing in my portfolio, and trying to replace them with stocks which I thought might be better. Okay. So any questions on this part?
So the restructuring part is, I mean, it's more of a judgment call on how you want your portfolio to be. That's fine. But if this is done purely for the sake of tax loss harvesting, at what period does this need to be planned? Is March the only time? And of course, that's obviously to gain the benefit for this year, this financial year. Or can this be done anytime and anyway it'll get adjusted in that FY? Like
Yeah,
what?
it can be done anytime. So the thing is that, see, I'm sort of very reluctant to act on my portfolio once I've bought it, right? So there is a Warren Buffett quote that buy carefully, sell reluctantly, right? Now, in this particular case, the thing was that uh, we bought the 30 Sensex stocks in the proportion of the Sensex, right? And then we'd watch them over time. And these 6 stocks were losing, right? And I was doing it in March because, that's close to the financial year and all that kind of stuff. So I'd given them enough time, right? So at least each of these I'd held at least for 6 months, 9 months, something like that, right? So, so that's why I did it in March. And then I said, okay, now just because this particular stock is losing uh, right now, uh, do I think it's because the stock is inherently weak, or this is just a temporary blip, right? Now, in all these 6 cases, I felt that no, FMCG might not do that well. Banks, I was not very bullish on. I wanted to cut my bank exposure and stuff like that. So there was a lot of analysis, which could be right, could be wrong, whatever. It was my view, right? And then the next question is, once you sell, then what do you buy? Right? So then I sort of bought these particular stocks because I thought that energy is something that I would rather have a little bit more of a weight in my portfolio. And this Geofin, it could do something pretty exciting and disruptive in the financial services space. So I bought some of that stock, right? So that was the analysis. And the fact that I would lower my taxes was like the cherry on top. uh, I mean, because the losses were losses, right? I mean, okay, so yeah, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, right? And the more longer periods that you hold, and if you sort of cut out the dead wood from time to time, like these losses thing, then most likely you'll end up in a situation where you have no losers, right? Because things over time tend to go up, right? So this is only if you've done some short-term purchases which are not working out, et cetera, or you have some sort of a strategy that you really need to look at tax loss harvesting. But in most cases, you're not going to have tax losses to harvest. Okay. Okay, so should we move on to the next one? Okay, so now the thing is that what you'll notice here is that I have these 4 cases where I'm losing money, right, after I bought them, right? So I want to hold them because it's too soon, right? I just bought them. Like I want to hold them. But the thing is, should I tax loss harvest now for these 4, right? That's what I want to analyze. Okay, so now I'm going to go in here um, into the last one, which is this thing, saying that before this, my position is that I have 12 lakhs 19,000 of losses in the short term because I had done some tax loss harvesting, right? Like I told you before. And I have 72 lakhs of gains because I'd booked some gains, where, whatever. So my estimated tax was 5,98,000. Okay. Now, if I take these were the amounts that I'd invested. There is no exit load because these are stocks. This was a loss, right? So I did the same analysis in here. Now my tax loss so the total loss was 458,161, right? So obviously this is a loss, so there's going to be no tax on it. So the entire, so instead of um, the, so you'll notice that here this 71 lakh 99,000, the 12 lakh is already netted off. So it comes to around 59 lakhs, which is why 10% of that is 5,98,000. Now here, instead of also, I now will reduce this 4,58,000. So it'll come down to 5,52,000, my gain. And the tax will be 552,184. So the tax loss gain will be 45,816. Right? Okay. So this is going to be the gain. Right? Okay. So this is the gain. Right? Now, if I come down here, again allocate that gain to the various stocks, and I see what my net loss is and all that kind of stuff. And then I calculate tax loss gain, which is minus exit load, which is the same because there is no exit load. And I calculate the break-even swings, right, that I'm going to face if I do this exercise. So again, I think the critical things that I'm noticing, which I will update closer to the time because I can actually do these transactions on the 29th of March, is that by doing this, my net tax saving is going to be around 45,860. Right? Now that can go up and down depending on what happens in the market. And these are the kind of swings. Okay. So the swings are like, suppose I sell and the market was down on the day I sold, say 29th March. And then I bought it on April 2nd. Okay. And the market was up. Right. Then I sold at a low price, I bought at a high price. So then the swing went against me. Right. If it happened the other way around, I sold and then the market went down further, then I gained on the swing. Right. So that's roughly the analysis that one has to do. So what are the takeaways from this? The thing is that tax loss harvesting can be useful or it may not be useful. You got to understand it and then decide whether you want to take advantage of it or not. Right? So there is nothing like tax loss harvesting is a great thing and you must always do it, all that kind of stuff. And quite a few of the people, when they say they do tax loss harvesting and all this kind of stuff, they say it because it kind of looks good, but you never know whether when you tax loss harvest, whether it's going to be successful or it's not going to be successful. It's just probabilities, right? In terms of trying to book this. But let's say this break-even swing was 1.5% or 3% or something. Now the chances that the stock is going to move 3% in a day are relatively low. Though there have been price movements, recently, like 5%, 6% in a day. So it's a little bit of a toss-up and a little bit of an art. And, so you got to know what you're doing. And if you hold the stock, you can study the charts, you can look at various things, and then make an informed decision. But in general, this is not something that you can, if you don't use it, it's fine. It's probably because you are buying for the long term and it's okay, But sometimes if you can use it well, like you saw in the previous case, right, where there was tax loss harvesting done, right, and it looked like it worked out, right, like in this case, the amount is quite substantial, right, 11 lakhs, it's not a bad amount, right? So those are the kind of things. And so like most people don't have a lot of time to sit down and analyze their stocks, things like that, or funds. But once a year, probably in March, you can do it, right? That's the sort of bottom line thing, right? So hopefully this was useful. What did you guys think? And if you have any other questions, we can talk about it. Otherwise, we can close this session.
No specific questions. I really like the concept. I've heard of the term, but I didn't know how it was done. Now I do. So thank you for that. And I think as a tool for just taking a quick health check on the portfolio is also very useful. Besides other things, sometimes the so-called gain that you make from an exercise like this is very, very small, it's not worth the effort. But sometimes if it is slightly larger, maybe that's some food for thought to kind of attempt this. So excellent presentation. Very, very simple. I could understand the concepts really well. So thank you for that.
Great. Madhuri, anything from that?
Yeah, no questions as such. But yeah, I used to think of this as tax optimization, but there's apparently a name for this. So it's good to learn something new. And yeah, I think for me personally, it's given me the thing to take stock of whatever I hold in terms of stocks, etc., maybe once a year. So far, I've just been in the mood of buy it and forget about it, because I'm not really looking to sell anything or things like that. So far this may not be immediately implemented, but it's a good exercise to know about in case there's ever going to be that event where I'd want to either change my portfolio or use a tool like this to optimize. So it's excellent presentation as always.
Right. So yeah, I think the last thing to say is that just because you're making money on a mutual fund or a stock doesn't mean you shouldn't sell it, right? Because if you feel that this stock in the future or mutual fund in the future is not necessarily going to do that well, or it has underperformed its peers in a big way, right? Then you should think of exiting, maybe partially, maybe fully, whatever, right? So once a year, doing some sort of a logical analysis of your portfolio is well worth it. And if you have tools which help you do that, or you talk with your advisor to do that and have an informed conversation, then you can say, okay, fine, I'm done for this year. Now I'll look at it next year, which is fine, right? So very few moves, but calculated moves if necessary. And if you bought the right stuff, and that's the nice thing, if you're in index funds and all, you don't need to think about it, right? Because you're in index funds. You're like, now in active funds, you got to think, is this guy losing his mojo? Are they performing better than other active funds? Should I be in small cap? Should I be taking a bet on energy? Should I be doing this, that, and the other, whatever, right? So it becomes more complicated, right? But with things like index funds and all, it's okay. Set it and forget it. Right? Okay. Okay, so let's stop this and we'll stop the recording. Oh, so